So, I want to talk today about sad songs and why it's important, especially at the moment, that sometimes we give ourselves space to listen to a sad song and have a good cry and have a little weep, and it's okay. Uh, it's so important that we put out positive energy and we do all that, but at the same time, we have to be honest about and open hearted about what's going on for us and how much we're feeling for other people around the world. And to be honest, the more friends you've made around the world, the more this is probably hurting you right now. And that's okay. It's okay to be heartbroken by the current situation because it does hurt us as human beings when other human beings suffer and are in pain and are hurting. So it wouldn't be human if we didn't acknowledge that and we didn't allow ourselves to experience that experience, this huge current global experience that we're going through. And although we might be isolated physically, it doesn't mean to say we have to isolate ourselves emotionally or mentally. Now, we all have to take really great care with our well-being, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual at the moment. But that doesn't mean trying to necessarily repress emotion, because very often that's how we create depression. And we create more problems if we become ignorant and we do not allow ourselves to be aware of what's really going on for us. And it seems sort of paradoxical that meditation can take us to this really, really high, beautiful states, and we can, feel above everything. And that's great that we can do that. But the purpose of that is not then to live up here and not come down from the mountain and not reach out to other people where they are. And a big part of my job at the moment is to remain open to people and allow them to allow me to have a chat with somebody and hear them, listen to them, hear them. And there was a couple of poems. What I love about sad songs is, they make us feel connected and they make us feel not alone in our sadness and our grief, especially when we have a romantic breakup. And sometimes it feels like nobody else in the world has ever experienced this. And those songs, whether it's Billie Holiday or Adele, they make us feel that actually somebody gets us, somebody understands what we're going through. And that's so important. And it's also important that we know that we can come into a class, like a Zumba class or something, and if there's a sad song and we get upset, that's okay. It's safe to do that. We don't have to be happy, clappy all the time. We don't have to be joyful all the time. In fact, this is, as a good teacher of mine says, this is a heartbeat. This is what a heartbeat looks like. It's not sort of up here all the time. That's a flat line. So life also takes us up and down. And if we embrace the ups and we embrace the downs, we can be truthful and we can, as Prince would say, get through this thing called life. And it's no good to kind of pretend that we're happy all the time. It's no good to pretend that we don't feel pain. It's like, we say to somebody, do you ever feel like this? And they go, no. It makes you feel really alone and really kind of like judged. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes because sometimes we're grieving and we can't grieve in that moment. It's not safe. It's not appropriate. It's not our time. And I really feel for the people in the NHS, the doctors and nurses, because they're being there for the people who are in real pain. But then also they are experiencing their own difficulties. We're hearing all the time about things that they're experiencing. And it's so hard to be there in that moment for somebody when, you might be feeling a lot of pain about, somebody in your family and you can't be there for them, so you have to be there for the person you can be there for. And these are the challenges of life. And a couple of poems that came up for me were the prophet Khalil Gibran, and this is heavily edited, so it's just, when love beckons to you, follow him. But if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. And so sometimes when we really live, we live up and down, It's one of the joys of coming out of depression is not to numb our emotions and not to pretend that everything's okay, or just kind of sit there and just eat loads of food or drink or be a workaholic, but to actually feel what we feel. And Pablo Neruda said it very beautifully. He said in a poem, "Tonight I can write the saddest lines." And so, really, I remember, I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert, or it might have been Brené Brown, that said in one of her books, she said, "I give you a permission slip to be a writer. I give you a permission slip, because you don't need it, but sometimes people feel they need it. They need a permission slip." And I think that very often when I would put a sad song into a Zumba class, it was like giving people permission to feel sad, to have a little weep, to go with those emotions. But they also were safe going into that emotion, knowing that the next song was going to kind of bring them back out. And I am reminded, actually, I was looking through my songs, and there's a beautiful song by Billie Holiday, which is called "For All We Know," and I put it into my playlist at one time, and everybody loved it. But then there were a couple of people that came up to me and said, "Please, can you take that out?" Because I can't take it. It's like I've got a friend who's very ill at the moment, and all the time I'm just thinking of that friend, and I need a space here to just to not feel that. So of course I could take that out, because I thought, what, once was enough. That was okay. And that's one of the things we've got to be careful, that we don't get addicted to our suffering. But also I was, when I was a teenager, I was absolutely in love with Billie Holiday and the music, and I realised now very recently that was because it was my way of being able to grieve for my father at the time, because I just was so incapable of dealing with that grief at that time. And so all her songs that were so full of pain and so full of love, and kind of this messed up love of, how can I love somebody who's such a want to use a rude word, how can I feel these feelings for somebody who so doesn't deserve any of that, and but for me, I really connected with that, and I didn't even know why, and I didn't even know on an intellectual level why, but on an emotional level, those songs pulled me through and allowed me to express emotion and to feel emotion at a time when I really was not capable of really properly grieving and really letting go. But it helped me through, and it helped me to deal with things as much as I possibly could at that time. So I would say sad songs can sometimes be a really beautiful gift. And when I was traveling, the song I used to love was the "I'll See Until I See You Again, I See You Again" by Wiz Khalifa, and I used to play that all the time when I had left my Zumba classes, and that was the one that I used to sing and cry to as I was doing my walking, because it was really hard to leave. And that was a song that really carried me through. And there was a beautiful one this morning that popped up. Strange things popped up on my phone this morning, and there's a beautiful one from Nashville, the soundtracks, and it's called "Wayfaring Stranger." And there was something about that as well, and gospel songs and things like that, and even listening to something like Vera Lynn's, "We'll Meet Again." There's a happy sadness to that. The lyrics can be positive, but the way she sings it is, we don't know. So sometimes we're telling ourselves this is going to be okay, but the music and the way the singer sings it tells the real truth of what's going on. And it's so important, all I keep hearing, and I think that keeps resonating for me, is holding a space, being honest. You can't sit here and feel this all day long, because you go mad. And so we have to do things that cheer us up. Of course we do. But please don't feel that you're failing if you get sad. Please don't feel that there's something wrong with you if you hurt for all the people around the world. It's very important, and it's very important that we find a way to safely connect with others, and then to kind of have our own experience, whether or not other people are having a similar experience. And one of the things that people said to me, I was talking quite a while about doing a book about depression and loneliness. And I write about all the good stuff, right? I write a book about anger, I write a book about fear. And but I realised the Camino books, really, I addressed the loneliness and really about learning to think for yourself when you're travelling alone. Because you don't have anybody else, you don't have to do what other people tell you to do a lot of the time. And but actually, every time I mentioned writing a book about loneliness, people would say to me, make sure you write about how it feels to be alone in a crowd. Because people, so many people said, look, I want you to talk about this because it's an experience that I've had and I've always felt this way. And it might seem weird to talk about crowds right now, but actually a lot of us are in a crowd in terms of being in a Facebook group, even an online fitness group, your family, whichever group you're working with, anything like that. And there can be a kind of like a group mentality. And sometimes you're not feeling the same as other people. And if you've got, and I'm reminded of a Grey's Anatomy episode when, you have a support group for patients or a couple of people who are going through things together, and it's like, we have to be positive, we have to be strong, we have to be positive, we have to be strong. And it's exhausting. And sometimes you just have to allow, you can be positive tomorrow. Sometimes it's okay to just feel your feelings and be sad. And that's okay. And it's okay to disagree with other people in that group. And it's okay that if all else fails, you can always reach out to Billie Holiday. You can always go and listen to Billie Holiday and experience that beautiful, painful sadness, that bittersweet, thing that tears you apart, because sometimes we need to kind of fall apart to come back together. Things have to break in order for them to be fixed. Things have to stop working in order for them to work better. And we are nothing if not about change right now. It's challenging and we all have to change. And sometimes the only way to do that is to let go of the person that we think that we are and let go of trying to be something that we think we should be and just embrace who we are. And part of that is being able to feel for others and being able to have compassion for others. And one of the translations, or one of the ways of describing compassion in some of the Buddhist practices is to suffer with. Now, I don't recommend you do it exactly like suffering with, but sometimes it's just about listening to somebody who's in pain or holding somebody's hand, which sadly we can't do right now. So it kind of makes it worse, So sometimes we have to be there for people more emotionally because we can't be there for them physically. And maybe for some of us, that's finding a new way to support and be there for other people. But I'll just end on Thich Nhat Hanh, who was an amazing Vietnamese monk, Buddhist monk, and he really changed Buddhism. And it's very interesting if you read about him. And when he started, he was a young monk in during the Vietnam War, and at that time the Buddhist monks were very much sort of isolated in their own monastery and up here. And he basically developed a thing that he called engaged Buddhism. And that was about coming down from the mountain and about working with people and looking after people in villages, in hospitals, in schools, being engaged with the people and serving the community instead of sitting up over here. So sometimes the most important thing we can do is to engage with others. And sometimes we have to engage with people where they are too, even if we're not experiencing exactly the same thing at the same time, to honour how somebody else is feeling. And even if we're not feeling the same way, we can say, I've been there and I know how hard it is, and we just can say, oh honey, okay, yeah, it's not a good day, and that's okay. That we can actually just be there for each other in so many ways, when all I really want to do is hug everyone, but I can't. So this is as good as it gets. Okay. Lots of love. Bye. I'm trying to end it honest.